So when we are creating our data set, it's also important to know that we can actually use code, and we have different triggers in order to do that. And let's have an overview on what happens when a report runs and which triggers we can use to write which type of code. So if you're going to run a report, let's see what happens if we are going to execute it. The first trigger which is going to be run is the onInit report trigger. Then the system is going to have a look if there is a request page, and if it exists, it will run the page triggers. After that, the onPre report trigger will be executed. Then the system is going to go into the data items, and for every data item, it's going to run the onPre data item trigger, the onAfter get record for all of the records, and then the onPost data item. And if there are multiple data items, it's going to repeat this process. And at the end, the system is going to run the onPost report trigger. So let's have a look at where we can find these triggers in the application. So here I am again in the design of my report. And as you can notice, I'm just going to first demonstrate this for a new blank report. So here I have a blank report, and I will go into the code. And as you will notice, we have our report triggers, the onInit report trigger, the onPre, and the onPost. What's the difference? Well, the onInit report trigger is actually going to be shown before, or it's going to be executed before actually the request page is shown. The onPre report trigger is actually going to be executed after we have actually shown our request page, after the request page. So it means that in the onPre report trigger, we can catch all of the filters and the options our user might have set in the request page. After the onPre report trigger, the system is going to execute the code for our data item. So let's say that I'm going to create a data item customer in here. Then I will go back into the code. What we will notice is that after the onPre report trigger, our data item is going to be processed. Then first the onPre data item, which we can set some information to filter. Then the onAfter get record, which is going to be executed after the system retrieves the record from the database, but before it will set it into the data set. So here we have the possibility to modify the information that comes from the data sets. And then after the execution actually of our data item customer, it's going to run the onPost data item, in which we can enter some code, for example, to clean up. Now, if we are going to use multiple data items in our reports, and then for every data item, we will have these data item triggers in which we can put our coding. What I can also show you is another example of the report 206, which is basically a document or a sales invoice report. And in those types of reports, if we go into the code, what you will notice is that there is actually a lot of programming happening in here. In the onInit report trigger, we are fetching information from our setup table, from the company, which logo are we going to display. Then am I going to display a request page, yes or no? Am I going to log user interaction? And then I will start by processing the information. I will start with the sales header. I might need to change the language. I might need to fetch some information from other tables. I might need to change information, how it will occur in the data set. So depending on the type of report, you can see the complexity can increase, but we have the possibility to modify the information that comes from the database before we're going to add it in the data set. And that's why we're going to make use of our report triggers. So let's summarize this. When the report is going to be run or executed, the system is going to start with the onInit report trigger, then any page triggers for the request page, if there is one, then the onPre report trigger, which we can catch the information a user might have set in the request page. And for every data item, the onPre data item, the onAfter get records, and the onPost data item will be executed, and this will happen actually for every data item. After all of the data items have been processed, system is again going to execute the onPost report trigger. And this is actually what happens when the report runs.